Today we're talking how to become excellent at being single. Welcome back to Becoming. My name is Nick Slater. We are joined by the handsome Italian Thomas Malucelli, a dating and relationship expert who provides the blueprint on exactly what to do if you're single and looking to attract your dream partner. Amongst a bunch of other things, in this episode we cover what to do if you've recently become single, dealing with loneliness, how to raise your vibration to manifest your dream partner, and why it's important to be really specific about the person you're looking for. We also talk about relationships, particularly how to make long distance work and dealing with conflict in a relationship. But I'll get out of the way because this episode is packed full of value. If you do enjoy it though, feel free to subscribe. And without further ado, here is Becoming Thomas Malucelli. Welcome to the Love Shack, brother, because today we're talking dating and relationships. Last time you came on the show, you'd been single for 2 years, I think, and it was just before you met the lovely Georgia. And before we do dive into that, I'm interested in any insights or learnings you gained from that single phase, and what does it take for someone to be excellent at being single?
Wow. I'm going to go back and ponder on those years now. I think, interestingly enough, I am the classic guy. I don't know if there's many guys like me that have been in a relationship all their life, pretty much. And so when I went from being in a relationship to single 4 years ago, I spent, for the first time in my life, 3 years single. Beforehand, I was always seeking for the next relationship. And so I never really had that time to focus on me, on my needs and what I truly wanted to become, how I wanted to spend my time with. And it always takes me back to this quote that I read, which says, if you don't spend time with yourself, how do you know that you want to spend time with someone else? Like, how do you know that that person doesn't actually appreciate you for who you truly are? And so I remember being single for me was like a necessity. It was really hard at first because my first 3 months were an absolute, excuse the French, shit show because I wasn't used to it. But I had like breakthroughs and breakdowns and I started crying for the first time. And so a few people that were a lot more involved than me told me like, Thomas, this is your chance. Like, take yourself off the dating apps, stay single, learn, read, develop. And that's what I did. And so I remember picking up one of my favorite books, which is The Way of the Superior Man. And I just read that book. And as I was reading the pages of that book, I just saw my previous dynamics or conflicts within my ex-girlfriend. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is me to a T. I was avoiding conflict. I wasn't making her feel safe or heard or appreciated or understood. I'm so selfish. And so I went down this rabbit hole essentially of self-development. And to answer your question, I really focused a lot on dating myself, on improving my body, improving my mind, in purifying my heart, because I had lots of pain in there and lots of guilt that I had to like release. And essentially I just dated myself for 3 years and it was amazing. Like, I did lots of journaling, meditation, reading, exercise, and I became someone who was really happy and spending time with himself.
I guess loneliness is one of the reasons why people jump back into the market before they're ready. What advice would you have for someone who's trying to overcome that loneliness before they can really start dating themselves?
Yeah. For me, the loneliness, I don't know if you can relate here, because I'm sure you've been single too, creeped in at nighttime. Like, I was doing all the things, I was working out, I was reading. And then when it came nighttime, I would be on the couch and I'd be, watching Netflix or eating a meal. And I was like, fuck, I'm lonely.
Yeah.
Like, I really wish I could share this moment with someone else. And it wasn't out of desperation. It was mostly out of like, I just feel that I'm so complete, but I want to share this moment with someone. And the first few weeks I was like, not a pleasant feeling. But then I just learned to appreciate it because I was like, you know what? I've got confidence that I will attract my person. And so when I was feeling those feelings of loneliness, I would just acknowledge them. And I would just take a few breaths and then I would just keep doing the things that made me feel good. And in that case, it was reading, it was going on some dates and also being on online dating apps.
Yeah, I love that acknowledging piece, because the tendency sometimes when you feel those uncomfortable feelings is to run from it and have some kind of coping mechanism.
Yeah.
But if you can acknowledge it and face it head on and sit in that feeling, you're going to be able to overcome that.
Yeah.
For me, In a relationship, you can be so yourself. And for me, that's being just a complete lunatic around the house and just being such a weirdo. And what I've loved with Zoe is just being able to be silly with her, because when you're alone around the house, you're probably not going to be silly by yourself. So that's something that came up for me.
If you are, does that make you even more weird?
Yeah, I guess so. When you're thinking back to that single phase, what particular habits or behaviors helped you manifest, Georgia?
Definitely getting clarity with who I wanted to attract. I remember in my dating phase, I went through this like era of like maybe a couple of years where I wasn't clear with who I wanted. Like I knew I wanted a beautiful girl. I'm just talking about, aesthetics here. But I didn't really quite focus on the internal attributes. And as a result, I was going on some fantastic dates. But then, when the attraction kind of faded, I didn't quite have the grounding that I was seeking in terms of like values and who they are as a person. And it got to the point where after a few dates, I got a little bit annoyed at myself because I saw myself in the same situation again where I was with a girl who... we will get into a point where we could have made the decision to, okay, let's progress this. But then my avoidant self will just be like, no, I'm going to escape from this because you're not the right person. And so when that happened, I got really clear. And I guess, we talked on the last episode about manifesting as well. I think manifesting is all about just getting massive clarity with what you want and who you want, and then just taking massive action towards it. If it's not aligned, it's not you. And I wrote a letter to my future soulmate, and I remember I put some music on, and I went in my room and I put some essential oils on, and I just got really clear. I was writing this letter in the future on how I felt when I was with her, and how we helped each other grow and motivated each other, and what she looked like. To the point where I even wrote down exactly how she looked like physically, but more so her internal values and how grateful she was for life. And after that process, I remember something really crazy happened. If the women who I was attracting or who I was perhaps matching with didn't have those qualities, then I immediately wouldn't even
entertain the idea.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think to answer your question, the first thing that comes to mind is clarity, getting absolute clarity with who I wanted.
That's so powerful because, not only is it a helpful way to attract that person, but you're right. When you go on those dates, you know what you don't want.
Yeah.
Which so many people, myself included, just go into a date flying blind.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you measure the quality of the date? How do you walk away knowing if it worked, if you have no idea what you're looking for?
Yes.
Part of manifesting is also about raising your internal self-image, your vibration, to upgrade and attract someone on that new wavelength. Did you have to do any work to upgrade your self-image?
Yeah, I definitely turned it up in terms of my health and fitness. I was definitely working out more than usual because it felt good. It felt good to be in the gym, and it felt good to upgrade my health set.
Yep.
At the same time, I was also turning it up in terms of recovery. My ice baths, my saunas, it made me feel good. I was spending more time in the sun, and I was doing a lot more self-improvement. And that definitely did turn up my vibration. And at the same time, I think that, if anybody is single listening to this, that is the first step that I found so beneficial, just really focusing on those attributes of myself, like really improving myself in a 360 way. I think as well, when it came to the improvement of myself, I was really focusing on going into places where my future soulmate could hang out.
Nice.
Because I was like, obviously, I'm going to be doing these activities when I'm with my soulmate as well. And so why not try and be in these places now where she could hang out? It could give me more of a chance to meet her.
That's a wonderful idea. Instead of going out to the club or
Exactly.
to the bar, go to somewhere that actually aligns with your values. Do you have any examples?
Yeah, totally. There was one in particular. There's this recovery center where I used to live, and it's just incredible. There's ice baths, there's saunas, and they're all communal. So you're sharing a sauna with probably 6 people, and you're in there for 20 minutes or half an hour, and it's almost like speed dating.
Yeah.
That everybody in that recovery center has as a value health and wellness and fitness. And so we were having these incredible conversations, half naked. They would go sometimes really deep. And I know for a fact that lots of people have found their partner in this place.
Is that right?
Yeah. We actually had ideas once to do some speed dating in the ice baths. We might revisit this soon.
That's a great idea because it puts you in such an amazing mood. It brings out everyone's best self. Everyone's more charismatic and chatty.
Yeah.
Hearing you say that, you know, those single times are the ultimate burst mode for self-improvement. Do you think there's a trap where sometimes people get into a relationship and they give up on those self-love practices, they give up on those self-improvement endeavors? Why do you think that is?
I think talking to lots of friends, there definitely is a bit of a trap where people in new relationships that haven't done some of the work beforehand, they find this person that perhaps is the person of their dreams on paper, and maybe for a fear of scarcity, they lose track of themselves to pleasure that partner, and as a result, they stop doing those things that help them become the best version of themselves or bring them, you know, joy in their life. So I think it's all because of that reason, and for me, it all goes back to really focusing on improving yourself first, knowing what brings you joy in life, what makes you your best self, and then find that partner that can complement that. And perhaps, which is something that I do, is then also having some agreements. And so when you enter a relationship, like, you know, writing down some agreements of what is important to you as an individual for your ultimate growth, and then what is important for you as a couple for you to grow together. And then based on that, you both know what's important to you and you can really honor those agreements. And it's a lot like, this might sound weird, but when you're in a relationship, it's a little bit, it's almost like a business transaction or a business relationship. You have like some agreements. I'm going to enter this relationship with you, and we're going to make sure that we both show up and we both make sure that the best person and grow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You got to be strategic about it.
Very much so.
Go in with intentions, with goals. And as selfish as it may seem, it is really important to put yourself first.
Yeah.
And that's where those practices come in to maintain a really robust sense of self so that you can show up into the relationship better.
Yeah.
What about some advice for someone who's recently become single? Should they just jump straight back on the apps and start swiping?
Definitely not. Don't do it. Don't do it. No, don't do it. Like if you just become single, put your apps on pause if you have them, and just give yourself 3 to 6 months where you're just improving yourself. Date yourself. I take it back to the 4 interior empires. Like focus a lot on your health set, your heart set, your soul set, and your mindset. Elevate those, purify those, and just become the best version of yourself. And I know, as cliche as this may sound, become the person you want to attract.
How do you know when you're ready?
Good question. When you're ready, because you are fully enjoying your life. You're fully enjoying your rituals. You're fully enjoying who you are. And you're at a place where you just feel ready to let someone else enter that sacred space that you created. That's what it was for me, at least.
Do you feel like it's also when you don't feel like you need someone, when you feel comfortable on your own?
Yeah. I felt that for so long, and then I had those moments on the couch. I was like, damn, I'm lonely, but in a good way.
Yes, yeah.
And that's when I said to myself, okay, I am by any means or forms desperate, but I am going to put it out there that I'm going to try and find my person now, consciously.
Yeah, because there's a difference between being conscious that you're lonely and you'd like a companion, and almost being insecure and needing someone out of a place of low self-worth.
Absolutely. And you can sense that. Like I've been on dates where the energy that I got from, the girl was almost like desperation. I am getting to the point now where I'm 34 and I'm 35 and my biological clock is ticking, and I totally understand that, but there was lots of need there. And when you have that kind of energy, it can be a bit repelling.
Yeah, absolutely. You can smell desperation.
Yeah.
I've got some mates who are guilty of that as well. The boys who go out actively seeking too hard. It's almost like girls can smell that on them and walk in the other direction.
Yeah.
When you're comfortable in yourself, feeling secure, and you don't need anybody, that's when you're magnetic.
Exactly. You attract what you want.
All right.
Very powerful.
I'm going to play you a clip from the last podcast we did together.
Nice.
Now, this was just over a year ago.
Yeah.
What's your type? What sort of girl are you trying to attract into your life?
For me,
what's important is having someone who has similar values to me. So somebody who really values their health and wellness, somebody who values their exercise and fitness, because obviously if she doesn't, then we're not going to be compatible in the long run. Someone who is driven and has purpose in life, and is out there to create some magic. I'm really attracted to that because I'm the same, and essentially having same values, and then just finding a best friend who I can align with, and obviously we can go and create some absolute incredible magic in the world.
How do you feel listening back to that?
Wow, I'm literally picturing the person I manifested. It was, I think if anybody listening to this knows Georgia, it's her. Like that's why clarity is so important. Like I just feel so blessed every single morning. I wake up, turn around, and I'm looking at this person who was an absolute stranger 9 months ago, and now she's like my best friend, my partner in crime, and we just get to do life together, and it's just beautiful.
I wanted to play that because it's proof that this shit works.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really inspiring. I love just how specific you were.
Yeah. And she was the same. Like I remember we went on our first date, our proper date after the podcast, and she was like talking to me about, what I was seeking in a woman, and similar things I was saying. And then she was just like silent for a second, and she was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "Who are you? Where have you been all this time?"
Did she have a similar process? Was she calling you in?
Yes, she was. She was very, very specific with who she wanted as well.
6'4" Italian guy.
You know what? She actually did want an Italian guy.
Did she really?
She did.
That's niche. I
know.
It.
She went real specific.
You took her to Italy last year, didn't you? Or was that this year?
This year.
How did she find that?
Incredible. So, funny story for you. On our first date, we were chatting, having a conversation. It was one interview. It's the first date. And then she asked me, "So where are you from?" And I was like, "Italy, Tuscany." Okay. She's like, "No way. So my best friend is getting married in Tuscany in May." And I was like, "Really? Whereabouts?" And she said, "Oh, it's this small town near Florence." And I was like, "Whereabouts?" And I was like, "It's called Bucin." And I was like, "You gotta be kidding me. That's where I grew up." And so what are the chances? And so then on the first date, knowing that she was going back to Los Angeles, and I probably wouldn't have seen her again, I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And she was like, "Oh, I might take you there." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, right." And then after 7 months, we went on a Europe trip to see her friend get married, and in my hometown.
That's insane. What are the chances?
I know.
Did she enjoy having a bit of local knowledge?
She loved it. She loved
someone
it.
who spoke the language?
Yeah, it makes a difference.
It probably blew her mind hearing you speak Italian.
I hope so. I think I did.
In a good way. What aspects of your relationship are you most proud of?
The work that we put in every day to ensure that we are growing in our relationship. It's a really big one for me, because with my previous relationships, I was a lot more selfish. I wasn't so much selfless. And so I was often prioritizing my needs. And with Georgia, we had from the start these agreements to always show up authentically, to always communicate how we're feeling no matter what. And since day one, we always show up to those agreements. And for me, what's the most important thing, which is something that I've learned with Georgia, is maintaining the purity of the relationship, that trust that we have. It's like, a beautiful white wall, and I don't want anything to interfere with it. And so every day, like, it's always showing up, it's always being our best self with each other. And, obviously there's days where I will probably feel less like showing up, or vice versa. But we always like pick each other's weight up, and we're a team, essentially.
That's beautiful. Do you have any scheduled times to do that, or is it when things come up for you? Say you need to get something off your chest. Do you have an organized place to do that, or do you just tell her at dinner?
We bring it up whenever it needs to come up. However, because of some previous conflicts that have happened at nighttime, particularly in bed, and we didn't sleep well, we were stressed, it was awful. We made it a commitment to never bring up anything negative whilst we're in bed. We might like acknowledge it, but then we always resolve it the morning after when we're fresh.
The worst part of that is when you're falling asleep with that on your mind, it sort of embeds in your subconscious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that's when you wake up in a poor
Such
mood.
an awful feeling. Like you've got your best friend there next to you and you haven't resolved this conflict, and it's almost even weird touching them for like a few seconds.
Yeah.
Can't do that. Been there,
Can't
done
do
that, not happening again.
What a good learning to take.
Absolutely.
As a male, do you find it sometimes difficult to talk about things that are on your mind or talk about your emotions with Georgia? I'm just speaking from experience here because I, pride myself on being able to talk about my emotions, but there are certainly times with Zoe where I might let it stew for a day or two before she goes, "What's up? What's wrong?"
Love that. Yes, I am very much like you, I think. Like I'm very open and I speak very vulnerably. However, I do have a past where I am quite reserved and I internalize a lot. And so despite that, I do find it difficult sometimes, but Georgia is very good and she will just sit me down and be like, "Hey, how are you?" I'm like, "I'm good." And then she'll stare at me in the eyes and be like, "How are you really?" And I'm like, "Okay, here we go." So yeah, I find it, I think like compared to most of my friends, I find it a lot easier to share my feelings and have deep conversations, but sometimes there's topics where I just, being a man, I just prefer not to share. But then I find that whenever I am vulnerable in those moments, it's always the moments where I have the most connection with Georgia as well.
Absolutely. Sometimes it can be tricky as a man because at the same time, we want to be leaders and show that we're safe and secure. So sometimes I find myself holding back on things to be vulnerable about, especially if they're not that important.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to make Zoe feel any less safe. I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do. I just think it's an instinct of mine sometimes. Do you ever come across that?
Definitely, often as well. Like I often think that I don't want to voice a problem or an insecurity because it makes me feel less of a provider or less than a man. And then what I find is that she always wants to know exactly what's going on. And sometimes like some things I don't share. She'll obviously kill me for this now, but yeah, it's very intuitive, and I often feel the same. Yeah. Besides
being ridiculously good looking, what are your strengths as a couple? I mean, you've already touched on a few by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I definitely say that in a relationship, Georgia is the brains. So she has the most incredible brain I've ever experienced and come across. So definitely the thinking, the strategy, the planning, the organizing is Georgia, and I am more the execution. So like, energy versus the thinking. And I love it because like with G, like I could just tell her a few things, a business idea or some content idea, and she would just like ponder for a few minutes and then like just give me the exact solution or formula that I need to do.
Wow.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Great friend to have.
Yeah. Are you guys aware of the balance between your masculine and feminine?
We're not really that aware of it. We've talked about it, and I have expressed to her like in the past in my previous relationship, like one of the biggest issues that I had, and this was without me knowing or without me doing any work on it, was that I was a lot in my feminine and my ex was a lot in her masculine, and because of that, we spent years without having sex, without being intimate, and it became a huge problem that then led us to break up. And so that's when I picked up the books and wanted to learn more about sex and relationships.
And that was the book you mentioned earlier,
The Way of the Superior Man.
I read that after you recommended it.
Yeah, very powerful book. Yeah, and then also Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus helped a lot. And I guess we talked about it, but I am able to create this safe space where Georgia can just come back to and just be herself and feel protected, and vice versa. She's an incredible nurturer, and so I'm just able to be my best self around her. I feel we both feel seen. We both feel heard, and so I think it goes without saying that we embody those qualities. Yeah.
When people talk about masculine and feminine, some people are a bit defensive about it because it goes against the feminist movement these days, and it can be seen as to be a bit controversial. But I think it's more representative of a model, and it doesn't mean that the female's always feminine, the guy's always male. It's just a way to represent the two energies and how they dance throughout the day.
Absolutely.
And I do think Zoe is so naturally feminine, where she where I actually feel more masculine around her.
Yeah.
And that seems to create a really nice polarity between us two.
It's a beautiful dance.
There are certainly times where she takes the lead on things and I become a bit more passive.
Yeah.
So I think it's just cool to recognize those moments.
Absolutely.
And yeah, if you are not having sex, if you're not being intimate, maybe you can go back and say, oh, how can I take charge a little bit more so that she can relax into her feminine?
Yeah.
And is that going to increase our attraction?
Yeah. There was moments I had this breakthrough the other day where for the first time ever, I was searching online on a woman's cycle and, you know, her behavior and habits and how she feels during a cycle. And I learned about the initial phase where usually like that's when a woman takes charge and can create more, is more a little bit more in her masculine and can do like more strenuous physical things versus the end of her period. And that's where usually like a woman just needs to feel nurtured and protected, like, you know, cook a dinner if she wants. And whilst I was learning it, Georgia was on her last days of her period. And so I ended up like going shopping and I made her dinner and I told her that I learned about this thing and she came back crying thinking, oh my God, like I can't believe you went through all the effort of learning this. And she just felt so seen. And that was like a huge brownie for me. So if anybody listening to this wants to like learn more about the behaviors of her partner, learn about her cycle, it's so cool.
Brilliant. Boyfriend of the year.
Thank you.
Love that. Yeah, Zoe's in touch with her cycle as well. And she'd probably kill me for saying this, but not on birth control. But we strategize around ovulation, and that's our way to practice birth control, I guess. But it is really interesting the more you learn about the cycle and how that influences their mood and what you can do to support that.
Yeah.
Nice work. I'll tell Zoe that one. Actually, I probably won't tell her you told me, and I'll get the brownies myself.
Yeah, get your brownies.
You mentioned you guys did long distance to begin your relationship. What challenges came up during that period?
Gosh, interestingly enough, long distance was my non-negotiable. So like I was like, because I've done it in the past, and I remember it was so hard because you obviously just want to be with the person that you love and adore, right? And then there's distance in between, so it's incredibly hard. But obviously, when you find the right person, it just goes out of the window. And so when we decided to do long distance, it was an effortless decision for us. But we said, okay, if we're doing this, we've got to do it right. And so again, we set some agreements to how we wanted to show up. And every single day we had some rituals. Whoever went to bed was gonna send us memes or a beautiful message. And then we did a FaceTime call once a day. And once a week, we had a proper date where we would ask each other questions on relationships to like grow. And so although we were, with miles apart, we were growing so much and we got to know each other so much. So the difficult part was definitely not being physically with my person. But then because we would FaceTime and message so often, it became, it wasn't so difficult. And we made this decision as well to see each other at least once every 6 weeks. And so out of it, we got some beautiful trips to, America and Hawaii and Byron Bay. It was really, really good.
What a great strategy to go in with. You're probably asking those questions, maybe you're connecting more than someone in a person-to-person relationship would.
Yeah. There's this other book that I was reading with her. It's called 8 Dates by the Gottmans.
Okay.
And it's 8 dates on how to grow your relationship. And you talk about family and kids and trust and commitment and conflict. Spirituality. So you really get to know your person really, really well.
Brilliant.
And every week there was a date on that. And so I think that just that made us grow so much.
8 dates.
8 dates.
Okay.
Fantastic
Check
book.
it out.
Yeah.
And now you've moved in together?
Now we're living together.
How are you finding it? What challenges or insights came up merging your lives together?
Talking to Georgia, I definitely realized that we were both very independent people. And there's often those days where you are perhaps in a low vibration, right? And in those days, usually the days where I would go in a cave and just, be by myself and just not talk. And Georgia would feel the same. And what came up the first week was like, oh my gosh, okay, now we live together. We don't have those moments where we can just go and hide. And so I was learning to be okay with feeling those negative waves of emotions whilst being with your partner. And then it was also learning just to hold space for your partner when those moments occurred. But nevertheless, although that was an initial phase that we had to learn about each other, it became a beautiful thing to witness, because we were again getting to know a side of my partner that I didn't know.
That's right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're doing long distance and you're checking in once a week, even if you're not consciously doing it, you're putting your best self forward. You're putting all your energy forward into that moment.
Yeah.
But when you're living together, there's no hiding.
Exactly.
They see everything.
Yeah. I think ultimately, when you're in a relationship and you choose to be in a committed relationship, it's you can be single and you can be dating for as long as you want, but then until you make that commitment of being with your partner fully committed, and having your partner be the mirror that reflects all of your insecurities and all of the work that you still need to do. Like until you are at that stage, I think that you haven't properly developed into the person that you can be.
What have you learned about yourself in your relationship with Georgia?
I've learned that I am worthy of love, and I've learned that my person does exist. I had some limiting beliefs around the fact that I couldn't find my person because I wasn't worthy of feeling loved, of being loved. And I had to do lots of work to like unpack that, why that was what I was feeling. And then once I let go of those limiting beliefs and I did that work to raise my vibration, I attracted Georgia, and I was like, wow, okay, I am worthy of this type of love. I believed it did exist, but it was just in my fantasy land.
Right.
And so it's just been beautiful to know that I've attracted somebody who is my dream girl.
It feels like you've provided a really actionable roadmap for someone who is single and trying to call in their perfect person. It's doing the work internally, raising your vibration, but then putting yourself in places eventually when you're ready to attract someone with similar interests to you.
Yeah. Totally. I honestly go back to that so many times. Self-worth, self-love, there's a clue in that, right? It all starts with you, with self. And until you do that work, you're not going to be able to maintain the level of connection that is required to keep your person. So self-work is so important.
From every clip I see online, it seems like the dating pool is really rough at the moment. And I guess you're great evidence of you don't need to go on the apps to meet your person. You need to live your life and put yourself in environments that you love, where you're going to meet similar people.
Yeah. I do believe, however, that being on the apps can help you so much more as well.
Really?
Because if you're putting yourself out there, which is needed, but then if you put yourself out there and you're also on the apps, then you got like almost double the chance of someone that isn't on the apps to find their person.
Right.
As long as I think you are very conscious to how you set your dating profile up, and then you just got to be really fucking good at asking the right questions straight away to figure out if somebody's going to be a time waster or an actual chance of you finding that person.
Yeah,
being that person, sorry.
And is that about chatting about your values? Seeing
Absolutely.
if you've got shared values?
Yeah, usually like I always used to start it off with, what are you looking for? Like, be honest. Are you looking for like a one night stand, or are you actually looking to perhaps finding a partner? And then it's all about what are your values? What do you love doing in your spare time? What do you do to entertain yourself? What is your... And this might sound boring if it's not what you're looking for, but to me, if somebody asks me, what's your vision for the future, or what goals are you working towards at the moment, I'm like, why are my clothes gone? Like, come over here, Yeah.
Yeah, and part of that is, again, being really specific about what you want. Stop flying blind, people.
Exactly.
Let's talk about your work. What's inspiring you at the moment?
At the moment, I'm actually finding my ground into showcasing my passions and what I'm really good at, and it all comes down to health and wellness and relationships. I've had my biggest breakthroughs in those two areas of my life, and I just really love talking about that and sharing value on what has helped me, just a normal guy, become the best version of myself. And so in my work at the moment, there's a couple of books that I'm waiting to publish. Stay tuned on that. And there's a project that I can't say much about in the health and wellness space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And you've started this Swipe to Soulmate as well.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you were saying, in the dating world right now, it's a bit of a jungle out there, and so many of my friends, and obviously I know from research as well, are finding problems in dating, in dating apps, in people, having uncommon behavior like ghosting and love bombing. And so I've discovered that so many people are out there trying to find their person, but so many people aren't taking the time to become the person. And so I just really wanted to share the steps that I took to become this person. And when I use myself as an example, I'm proud to say that I was the common guy who wasn't self-aware, who wasn't emotionally intelligent, or at least was quite asleep in those areas of his life. And then through the work, I was able to become that person. And it's really simple things, but I believe that they have so much value. And so I put them all together in a book, and I talk about essentially how to become the person that can find the person and then also keep the person.
I love what you said about stop trying to find the person, become the person. That is a perfect way to describe where I feel so many people are falling short when they're dating. They're actively seeking people. They're going on way too many dates.
Yeah.
They just need to return to themselves and be the person that they want to attract.
Yeah, it's so important. Stop looking for your soulmate. Start looking for your soul, mate.
Dude, what's next for you and Georgia? Are you guys just living the dream? Do you have any plans to travel? What's coming up?
We have quite a few plans for travel. We've got some exciting plans in terms of like business together, and then it's about growing and getting to the next stages of our relationships. We've talked about marriage, we've talked about kids, and it's exciting because when you find that person, you just want to take your time in going through every level of the relationship and really being present and making the most out of it. But then you really want to go through all the levels. At least that's what I found. Back in the day, like I'm talking 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't prioritize, a wedding, for example, marriage, or I didn't quite see myself as a dad even because I was so selfish.
Yeah.
But now I see like us becoming parents for me would be the ultimate vision, because it means that I am now becoming someone who is prioritizing my kids, and so I am not selfish anymore, but I'm putting all my attention and energy into another human being. And that is something that I want to experience, that I think I need. And just going through that process with your best friend, not knowing what to do, but just doing it, I think is super exciting.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
The reason I asked that question is because on the last podcast, you said it's not that you didn't want kids, but you couldn't see yourself being a dad. It's not something you were manifesting. Is it something you're manifesting now?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I respect the timings. I know that we have a few things we want to accomplish first, but it's one of those things that I know that is going to happen soon, and I'm excited about it.
Thomas Malucelli, I feel like that's a perfect place to end this one. Mate, thank you again for coming on the pod, and hopefully we can do a round 3.
Yes, thank you.